Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. Today, we're going to talk about a couple of coaching hires that kind of round out this coaching staff for the Seahawks, as well as our second in a multi-part series looking at NFL draft prospects. Today, we're looking at running backs. Don't know how interested the Seahawks are going to be in diving into that market, but we will talk about them nonetheless, just in case. So welcome in, Keith. How you doing?
Doing good. This is, yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on that we need to talk about here, but when it gets to running backs, it's like part of me kind of hopes that the Seahawks are not into this draft class, because they've used early picks 2 years in a row, and at some point they better be getting something out of those picks. And
the only thing that gives me pause, there's a couple of things. Number one, this is Ken Walker's third season. We've got him for one more season after this. He's a certain style of running back. And over, I've heard McDonald talk about identity and talk about the type of offense. And they want to be physical. They want to be fast. They want to be this, that, and the other. And I'm not sure if Ken Walker fits that mold to a T, but he's under contract and he's cheap and he's on the roster, and they don't have to go out and spend a draft pick when they've got a whole bunch of other things to look at. But if they decide to move on, they decide to move off Ken Walker and keep Zach Charbonnet, who kind of fits the mold a little better, they could pick up an additional pick. He's not going to be worth a lot, but I'm just saying they could move off that and kind of start over a little bit if they wanted to, because there's a couple of potential draft picks in this class that I really like a lot. But I don't know if it's enough for the Seahawks to pull the trigger on.
Yeah, there's a couple backs in this that I like. Honestly, they want to be fast. Ken Walker's fast. He was very effective when given opportunities. He is good out of the backfield as a receiver.
He did run hard last year compared to the first year.
Yeah. He showed a lot of things, and I don't see any reason with where the team is for you to be like, oh, he doesn't fit our style.
He sure seemed like he was a lot more explosive in his first year compared to the second year. Not a lot of breakaway plays, not a lot of broken tackles compared to the first year.
Well, I mean, the first year he did a lot of bouncing, a lot of
true that. Just
running in space that sometimes he created, and not the defense, or not the offensive line. The second year, there was a lot fewer opportunities. I don't mean that in terms of carries. I just mean like there was a lot. The blocking wasn't as good. Opposing teams did a better job of keeping someone home, so that way when he tried to bounce, he just ran into someone. Yeah, I mean, he was effective. He was the most effective back that Seattle had.
I agree with that. So, I do agree with that. And, Jack Charbonnet strikes me, after seeing him 1 year, strikes me as a guy that needs some carries to like build some momentum and build some consistency. And I'm not sure he's going to get that. And so we'll have to just kind of see how that goes. Let's get into the running back conversation in just a minute. Let's talk about coaches that were hired, assistant coaches, this last week to kind of round out the staff and give us a better picture of what the Seahawks are trying to do. And I'll run through them. You can kind of plug in and comment as you see fit. Kennedy Palomalu as the running backs coach. Spent the last 6 seasons in Vegas and with the Raiders and with the Vikings. And then he had the same role with the Cleveland Browns and the Jaguars from 2004 to 2009. Then he spent some time at USC, was the special teams coach there when Pete Carroll was there for a minute, and then came back into this role recently. That's a lot of veteran experience, coaching experience to add to that running back room there. I like that hire. I think it's a good hire. Any thoughts on that one?
I think it's a good hire. I mean, it is. It's a lot of experience. It's someone who really, he's been there. He's done it. He's seen things. He's taught people. He's worked with some of the best.
Yeah.
He got a lot out of Jacobs. If you go back far enough to Minnesota, I believe he worked with Adrian Peterson for a year. This is someone who knows football, and Seattle's got a bunch of young guys at the position they need,
and some rookie coaches.
Yeah. It'll be a good fit, because I think you can get a lot more out of those guys than Seattle was able to last year, and they need good coaching. And
Chad Morton was good. I mean, I thought Chad Morton's a good running back coach, but I agree. I think there's more to get out of that group, and I think in the combination with blocking up front on the offensive line, we'll see how that kind of comes together for this team. They hired Frisman Jackson as their wide receiver coach. Coached the Steelers wide receiver room the last 2 seasons, formerly with the Browns as a receiver, and also with Titans and Panthers in their wide receiver room. And the Seahawks, probably the biggest get, I think, out of this list for me is the hiring of the Rams passing game coordinator, passing game specialist, Jake Peetz, as their pass game coordinator. Former offensive coordinator at LSU. So he's got offensive coordinating experience at LSU, candidate for the Buccaneers job this offseason as the offensive coordinator. I think it's a great hire. It's from the Los Angeles Rams. So he gets to be, out of that tree, and gets us to have some insight into their scheme and so forth. And they do a good job there as well. So I kind of like that hire.
We've now hired the last 2 passing game coordinators away from the Rams.
That's true. I like this.
The one before him was Shane Waldron.
Yeah. I like this hire for a second reason. It kind of gives us a chance to have a kind of offensive coordinator in waiting on our own staff. So if Grubb was to be successful and gets poached away in the next couple of seasons, we've got this guy that's got the experience that would know the offense by then to kind of step into that role and kind of keep the continuity going. And McDonald kind of referred to that a little bit when he had his press conference, talking about keeping the continuity going and having coaches in waiting, being ready to kind of come up and step into roles. So it's a good thing for me. Now I want to say this about Pete's. Peter King wrote about this hiring cycle. He'll win every interview. One peer told me, former quarterback coach of the Raiders and Panthers, former offensive analyst for Nick Saban at Alabama, former offensive coordinator at LSU. Well respected by Sean McVay in his 2 years with the Rams. What impressed me is Puka Nakua telling me in October that he learned the Rams offense in long early morning sessions with Preetz in May and June. Imaginative guy. So, I mean, that's a pretty good endorsement.
Yeah. The fact that, we've got this kid who wants to learn this stuff. So I'm going to sit down and waddle long sessions of teaching him because he wants it and I'm willing to do it. And that's the kind of situation where the player is asking for it, which that's great on them. And the coach is willing to give up their time and do it. And that's part of the reason why you saw Nakua just explode this year, and is a large part of why the Rams were better than predicted.
He was ready on game 1.
Yeah.
That kid. I mean, against the Seahawks, he had a stellar debut against our team, to our detriment, of course. The Seahawks added Devin Fitzsimmons as a special teams assistant to work with Harbaugh. He's He's got 10 years of experience in the league, and as a special teams guy, Panthers special teams assistant last season. Frank Wright's staff last year, same position in Arizona prior to that, and then with the 49ers, I think, or excuse me, with the Cardinals, last year, and 2021 as well. So that's it for the coaching hires. I think that kind of really rounds out. There's going to be some quality control coaches and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're still missing some defensive coaches. They've got an inside linebackers coach, but not an outside linebacker coach.
That's true. They did hire or retain one of the kids that you liked. I think he went to Portland State. Sneed was with us last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe that's why it didn't come across my desk, is that if it was a retain and not a
they kept him around. I can't remember his first name. Sorry, everybody. But anyway, you're right. And they've got to kind of round things out, but more or less, it's a pretty full staff, and I'm kind of liking it. I mean, it's new to us, but these are guys that McDonald respects, guys around his coaching staff respect. I'm sure he's gotten a lot of feedback all over the place to get these guys in. So it'll be, I'm curious as to how this thing is all going to come together, because you're going to have a new scheme on offense, a new scheme on defense, all new coaching. There's going to be a learning curve here. And it'll be very curious to see how quickly it kind of rounds into shape.
Yeah. A lot of it's going to depend on how many guys get in the building during OTAs, and especially the voluntary ones, the non-required ones, so they can get some of the installation done and that kind of stuff. They've got to get. There's a lot. You're right. There's a lot of learning that needs to happen, because all this stuff is new, and they can't wait for August to try and do that.
Okay. Running back conversation. Here we go. I'll let you start. I've got my list. I'm sure you've got yours. There's certain guys I want to talk about. Others I'll just pass on a little bit. Who's your number one?
Okay. So it's hard, because when I do these things, I try and tailor it to Seattle, right? So it's not just, oh, this is the best player, but no, this is the best player in Seattle. And I don't know what they want if it were the new offense.
We've heard him say, I want to be physical. I want to pound. I want to be able to run the ball effectively. I want to pound the ball.
So
does that give you any clue?
Well, to me, what I went with on this is Trey Benson out of Florida State.
Yeah, he's my number one. A lot of people say that Jonathan Brooks is, but I don't like Jonathan Brooks's resume. He's kind of short on the quality touches that he's had in college.
I mean, overall. he had a hard time getting on the field the year before because he was behind,
Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, a great player. But I like Trey Benson. I like his size at 6'1", 223. He's got some breakaway speed at 4.37. I think he's the best of the group there. I'm going to come out and say before this is one player, but when we start looking at the whole thing, I don't think there is a Bijan Robinson type blue chip running back in this group. I think I doubt any of these guys there's none of them that are first round talents. Most running backs shouldn't go in the first round anyway, just for lots of reasons. But I expect,
when you say first round talent, do you mean just electric kind of talent, speed, but not necessarily height, weight, or just playmaking ability, or the entire package?
Just entire package. Like for
receiving out of the backfield, etc.
Yeah, for a running back to go in the first round, they've got to be the complete deal. They've got to be Bijan Robinson, or even Jahmyr Gibbs, who was just super fast gadget guy. There's very few first round running backs because the running back has been devalued in the league. And so just continuing along with that, the threshold that you've got to reach to be a first round running back is pretty high. And I don't think there's anyone in this group that is that high. But once you get down midway through the second round, someone there, that's when you start to see a lot of players. And there's a lot of that second tier quality running backs, guys that will be starters in the NFL, guys that will have very productive careers in the NFL. And
will Seattle draft a running back, Keith?
Probably in the 6th round or something.
DeeJay Dallas is out of contract. Don't know if they're going to bring him back. McIntosh didn't really play last year. They've got 3 on the roster, 2 of which are really pretty decent. They don't really need, second, third round talent.
They got a couple guys on futures contracts too.
I will say this, do our guys fit the mold of what this new regime wants? I don't know that they necessarily have the draft capital or the salary cap to change out the running back room. If they wanted to, because they just have too many other priorities.
One of the biggest selling points for Grubb as offensive coordinator is his ability to tailor what they do to the talent on the roster. That's what he's been known for at every stop in his coaching career. He has never been someone said, "Oh, I can only use this kind of guy." He'll make do with 2 really good running backs, even if they aren't exactly what they want.
As much as Seahawk fans, fall in love with the running back. Now, I'm not saying Seahawk fans fall in love with the running back in round 2, because they would kind of bitch and moan if we were to pull the trigger.
Years.
That'd be crazy, right? And that's where a guy like Trey Benson's going to go, top half of the second round. He's worth it. I mean, 6'1", 223, runs a 4.5 You mentioned 4.37. 0 fumbles in 2023. Had the most rushes in the class that average over 21 miles an hour. Not only is he a guy who can break away at any spot in the field, he's 223 pounds. He's going to break tackles all over the place, all that kind of stuff. And he can catch the ball out of the backfield too. I like him. And we kind of brushed over Jonathan Brooks. I will say this about Jonathan Brooks. He injured and torn his ACL at the end of the 2023 season. He's going to have delayed contribution in the NFL, if at all, in 2024. So for me, and that reason, I think he falls a little bit. A lot of people look at him as being the number 1 running back on their boards, and I don't see it. He's dynamic, but he's only got 177 carries in 2023. Tore his ACL. Didn't have a lot before that because of the aforementioned Bijan Robinson. And I don't care for that too much. I think he's probably 3rd or 4th round to me.
Yeah, the injury will drop him. I think if he hadn't gotten injured, we'd be having a different conversation about him. I get why people have him as their number 1, just because I think the talent is there. He's also young. He's only 20 years old. He's not even 21 yet, and won't turn 21 until July.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of tread left on those tires, but you have that injury. That injury is going to cut into his rookie season. We've seen what happens if rookies don't get a good training camp. They don't learn the offense well enough. They have a hard time making a contribution. Their rookie here, it's just hard on them. And so you end up in a situation where teams will draft him later. They'll move him down on the board because they don't know if they're going to get anything out of him. And so that's one of the 4 years of his contract that you're just punting on.
Talk to me about a couple of prospects on your list, Keith, that are have differing opinions out there. Some people have them higher, some people have them lower, and why?
So I'll start with Blake Corum, the running back out of Michigan. He's a guy that
start with.
I've seen him. He's 5'8", 213. I've seen him high, like the 3rd best. I've seen him at the 6th or 7th best. He's supposed to be fast, like a 4.40 range. We'll see at the combine. I mean, all these numbers are
Right.
projected, so we don't even know. I don't know. He's not tall. He's less athletic than he is fast. And I don't know if he's going to have that make people miss kind of athleticism, but he's got speed. He's got a low center of gravity, which should make him harder to get down. And I could see him just being a really solid contributor at the next level.
Yeah, and that's the key word right there, solid. The guy's a solid prospect, solid contributor. He was a solid contributor at Michigan. Heck, they went to the national championship, and a lot of it was because of his legs.
Because of the running game, yeah.
Yeah, 1,245 yards and 27 touchdowns in 2023. Guy's got great vision, good contact balance, all that kind of stuff. But nothing special about him. He doesn't have great breakaway speed. You mentioned maybe 4.4. I've got him listed a projection at 4.55. So somewhere in the middle of that is where he's going to land. Yeah. And that's why I think the combine is going to be huge in a couple of weeks, but he's physical runner, strength, elusiveness, good feel for the game. He's definitely got starter ability in the NFL. I just think he's going to be an league average guy. And that's why I've got him lower a little bit. How about a guy like Bucky Irving from Oregon? Here's another guy that's got 90 plus rushing grades his entire career, but he's going to get marked down a little bit because he's 5'10", 195. In the past, the Seahawks haven't really looked at a running back that size. I don't know that necessarily fits McDonald's idea of a physical, breaking tackles kind of a guy. He's going to be more of a change of pace guy, but even at that, he's projected to be a 4.49 guy.
Really?
I see him like a third round guy, shiftiness, 1,100 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. But
we're clearly looking at different resources for these projections, because I've got Bucky Irving in the 4.36 range, which would make him really freaking fast.
That would be really fast. I've seen him at 4.46. I've seen him at, what was my other one? 4.49. You're talking about getting into the 4.3s. So yeah, that's the problem with some of the stuff right now is you just don't have those combine numbers, and we'll get those in a couple of weeks. We can add those to our notes.
Yep.
But he's another guy that I'm not too high on as an NFL running back.
Well, see, I'm not high on him as an NFL running back because of the lack of size and because of what I'm used to as far as scouting from the last 14 years under Pete Carroll. But that doesn't mean he's not going to be a good pro. He's not going to be a between the tackles kind of guy, but he offers some kickoff return and third down back kind of stuff. He looks like he's going to
catches for 299 yards this last season.
Yeah, he looks like he's going to be shifty. He's one of those guys that you can get it if you can get him in space and let him make people miss rather than try and make him run people over, that he can do some really good things. And so I think that it's one of those situations where he could be good, but I don't know how he fits in Seattle, in part because he doesn't fit what Seattle's drafted, but now we have a new coaching staff, so we don't know. But it also doesn't fit what McDonald said he wants.
Right.
So
if I was, can I talk about a couple of backs?
Yeah.
If I was McDonald and I was going to select a back based on the information that I have that McDonald has told us, which is physical and yada, yada. There's two backs that I really like in this draft. And regardless of him, it would have been a fit for Pete Carroll's offense too, is Audric Estime. The running back out of Notre Dame. My goodness, you go watch him play. 5'11", 227 pounds, looks like an NFL running back, hulky frame. He's athletic, like super athletic. Like he can jump over guys, like he was doing the hurdles and extend plays. He had a Pro Football Focus had him at his 94 grade, the highest in college football. He made people miss on tackles, led the nation in carries over 15 yards. But he was ranked, check this out. He was ranked 241st in yards after contact and 93rd in missed tackles forced, though, which is really poor. But you look at him and he just doesn't show that. He looks like he's much more physical and intimidating than that. So that's one guy that I think would be interesting. And then Braylon Allen, the guy from Wisconsin. Yeah, he is all over the place.
If you look at what is it, Estime? You've seen, if you go look at Box, Rob Rang's got him as the best back in this entire class.
Yeah, you look at his film, he looks like the best back.
Yeah, and then you go other places, and he's 5th, 6th, 7th on some big boards. And
if he runs in the 4.4s and mid 4.4s, this kid could end up going in the second round. If he runs in the 4.55 to 4.6 range, maybe not. But he looked explosive. Like on film, he looked explosive. He looked like he could convert speed to power.
Explosive, but he doesn't run with power. He looks like he should run with power.
He's elusive.
But he doesn't make people miss, and he doesn't
227 pounds. Yeah, I know.
He doesn't run, and he doesn't break tackles. So there's some question. I think
Charbonnet was this size when he came out, and Charbonnet was also pegged as being a guy that avoided tackles and kind of had the same sort of feel to him.
He didn't have a guy that avoided tackles. His reputation was a guy that just ran people over, couldn't make people miss, but so instead he just punished them for tackling him. That was I don't know.
Charbonnet. You go look at Charbonnet's film though. He had plenty of elusiveness, but this is one of my favorites. The other guy that's one of my favorites is Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. I really like this guy. I'm hoping that he lasts until the third round or so, and Seattle decides that they're gonna go get another running back and to replace DeeJay Dallas, and this guy could be a guy that you would look at. 6'2", 245-pound back, 3,494 yards, 35 touchdowns on 597 carries in 3 years at Wisconsin, but doesn't turn 20 years old until he turned 20 years old in late January. So he's just 20. The problem with this kid is he fumbles. He puts the ball on the ground every 66 carries. That's not going to fly in the NFL at all. Yeah. But he's 245 pounds at 6'2" and runs a 4.440. When you look at him, he's just a physical beast. I like it.
That's big. That's really big.
That's big. That's big. All right. Who do you got?
How about we stay local and we go Dylan Johnson, 6 foot, 218 out of Washington. Played at a couple other schools, is a guy that runs hard. He's a good route runner, does a lot of stuff out of the backfield well. And, as a runner, he's super athletic, does a lot of those things. I mean, his vertical, his height, his shuttle times, his 40, all are going to be up there. So as far as athleticism, looks like he's going to be great. The weakness when you start looking at his tape is when he's trying to when they need him to step in and pick up a blitzing linebacker. Sometimes it looks ugly. And stuff like that, but that's true for a lot of rookies, and it takes some time to learn that stuff.
Yeah. So, and he's a resilient guy. He battles through injury. That showed up in the last 3 or 4 games of the season at Washington. That guy stepped up. He could barely get him off the field, and he was just clearly walking with a limp, and the effectiveness wasn't there. But he was still the best guy that Washington put on the field. At times, I wondered about that. I was like, is this the best guy, given his limitations on his ankle and whatever else he was battling, that Washington could put out there? But they left him out there, and he got him to the championship game. And Penix.
Yeah, if you look at with him when he was healthy, that offense clicked and just was absolutely unstoppable.
Where do you?
When he wasn't, the offense stumbled a little bit. And I think that shows you a little bit about he was more important to that offense than I think a lot of people gave him credit for.
All right. So Gibbs or Grubb is the offensive coordinator. This is his guy. This is a guy he went to battle with for a while.
Yeah. Current draft projection is 4th round. He drops into the 5th. Seattle grabs him because they could use another back, and that's not much in the way of draft capital to get a guy you can depend on.
That's the key right there. Knowing you can depend on a guy and the guy that's going to play through some injuries, nicks and cuts. We saw some issues with that in the running back room for Seattle, especially at the top. DeeJay Dallas was missing a couple different times as well. So guy that's just kind of battle tested, willing to play through some stuff. That could be important. Do you know if he has any return ability or anything like that at all to help him add value?
Honestly, I don't. I didn't look into that.
I don't think he did at Washington.
I don't think he was used in that at Washington because he was too big of a part of their offense. But that doesn't mean he can't at the next level. I mean, DeeJay Dallas wasn't a kick returner in college, but he was for Seattle.
So there's a few other guys that are going to be available in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State, Jalen Wright with Tennessee, Will Shipley from Clemson. The list kind of goes on. And I think that I need a little bit more time. I'd like to see the combine. And as we get closer to the draft, I think if there is a conversation to be had, if anything happens on the roster beyond DeeJay Dallas coming back, to give us any idea that the Seahawks might expend draft capital on a running back, I think we could spend a little bit more time on it.
At this point, I'm having a hard time justifying spending a lot of time looking at running backs because I don't see Seattle drafting one, or if they do, it's going to be really late, and that's a lot of searching for tape and trying to do scouting on guys that some people have never heard of, and it's really hard to find tape on. So yeah, I'm much more interested in let's go look at some wide receivers because, Seattle's got 3 good ones, but there's a lot of smoke about a Tyler Lockett trade. And if that's the case, they need it. Then they're gonna be in the market for another, probably 3rd round wide receiver.
What do you think of Jake Bobo in this scheme?
Actually, I kind of like it. He's not. It was the 4.9940. They talked about it every single.
He's probably
game
closer to 4.7. Let's be honest.
It's probably in the 4.6s. He wasn't at the combine. It wasn't measured that way. Whatever. He doesn't play that slow. There were a couple plays where he ran away from defensive backs. Now, he's not fast as wide receivers go, but
he's not as slow as Abe Lucas. Abe Lucas ran a 4.94 or whatever at the combine.
He's not an offensive lineman. I think his height, he plays physical, he blocks well down the field, he makes good catches. We didn't see him drop balls. Is he
made plays? He was a kind of a playmaker. Every time he got in, he showed up.
Was he a guy that is going to be really hard to cover and get separation really quickly the way Tyler Lockett does? No, he's not. But he's 6'5". He doesn't need to be. He needs to do what he does. And I think there's a lot to like there. I think he's got a spot on this roster and on this team. And I think it's going to be a productive one.
How about Derek Young and Dwayne Eskridge? And of course, we'll get into these things. I think we're going to do wide receivers next, tight ends, one of the two, in our next shows coming up. But where Derek Young and Dwayne Eskridge, to me, Dwayne Eskridge, Maybe he's got a better. This is like going to a different team for doing. It's like showing up and getting traded and waking up in a new scheme with new coaches with a fresh start. And maybe that's what Dwayne Eskridge needs the most.
Because it was never a problem with the coaching staff or the scheme or any of that. The dude can't stay healthy. He walks out on the football field, trips over a blade of grass, and hurts his knee. I mean, in college, he was dynamic, athletic, looked like he was going to be kind of a cool gadget player.
Mm-hmm. So let's draft him over Creed Humphrey. What do you think?
God, I am still mad.
Ouch, right? We're never going to live that down. But I am excited to see Derek Young. Speaking of injuries, he was kind of battling those all year too. Never really got in sync. Never got in favor on the with the offensive coaching staff there, and just
never got healthy. But he's
Jackson
big.
Smith and Jigba ended up with like 68 receptions on the year. That kind of surprised me too. That kind of crept up after kind of a slow start for him.
He did have a slow start. Part of it is that if you look at the backs that had, bigger year, or not backs, wide receivers that had bigger years, the Zay Flowers kind of guys, the guy out of USC that went to Michigan, Addison, that's who his name is, had bigger years. They got off to start, but they also didn't have as much stuff around them. JSN was the third receiver. He was not surpassing Metcalf or Lockett. So he wasn't getting on the field as much, whereas Flowers was pretty much the main target from day one because they didn't have a lot of wide receiver talent around him. So it was a slightly different situation, but once he got going and got on the field, JSN made a big impact. So I think that you're going to see a lot more of him, and especially if
I really like our wide receiver room. There's not much there to do if Tyler Lockett remains on the roster. I think you just kind of roll with what you've got. Maybe you pick up a couple camp bodies, let them compete on the back end, and see if
Derek Young can stay healthy.
All right, let's get out of here. We'll have more conversations on all those playmaker spots, but good conversation on the running backs. Again, it's not one of those premier spots we're looking at for the Seahawks to have any action this offseason, both in free agency and in the draft. And so we kind of cursory went over, the top 7-8 prospects that everyone's going to be looking at anyway. Everyone's kind of drafting in their mock drafts, or maybe not, especially Seahawk fans. I think we're done with drafting running backs for a minute. Probably not too much longer though. Ken Walker again will be in a contract year next year, so we'll see. You can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, share it, leave us a great comment and review if you think about it. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.